A day in the life of a medieval peasant. It's still dark, not the kind of dark you get in cities today with headlights, lampposts, or glowing screens, but real, heavy, honest-to-God darkness, the sort of black that wraps around your eyes like a woolen blanket. You'd think the world had gone to sleep and pulled the stars in with it. But in a small village in medieval England, the day is just about to begin. This is the world of Aelfric, a simple peasant. His home is a small, one-room cottage made of timber, mud and straw. The roof sags a little in the middle. The walls creak when the wind blows. The floor, just packed earth, may be swept once a month if anyone remembers. No windows, just a wooden door and a hole in the roof to let out the smoke, or at least try to. Inside, the fire has gone out in the hearth, which is bad news because that fire is everything. It gives light, heat, and cooks whatever humble meal is on the menu. Right now, though, it's just cold ash. Aelfric grumbles and sits up. His bones already ache, and the sun hasn't even shown its face yet. He's not old, not really. Maybe 30. But in the 14th century, that's more or less halfway to the grave. If you still have all your teeth by now, you're considered lucky. If you've only got most of them, well, you're still doing better than your cousin. He shares the cottage with his wife, 2 kids, and a goat named Agnes. Don't ask why the goat has a name and the kids don't. It's just how things go. Agnes is family. She sleeps near the hearth, probably warmer than anyone else in the house. The kids are still curled up on a pile of hay, snoring softly. His wife, Aldgytha, already sits up beside him, rubbing her eyes and tying her hair back with a bit of string. First order of business, the fire. Aldgytha reaches for yesterday's coals, tries to coax them back to life with a few puffs of air and a bit of dry straw. It takes a minute, then another, then, at last, a tiny flame dances to life. Aelfric nods like he's impressed. Every morning it's a gamble. No fire means no warm food, and cold pottage is worse than warm pottage, which is already pretty bad. Speaking of food, breakfast is simple. Bread that's gone a little hard, maybe a thin slice of cheese if they're lucky, and a wooden mug of weak ale. Yes, ale. It's safer than the water, which is usually full of things we don't talk about at breakfast. Everyone drinks ale, even the kids. It's not the kind that gets you stumbling. It's more like bread-flavored tea, but fizzier. The cottage slowly wakes up with soft noises, the crackle of fire, the cough of a child, the low bleat of Agnes demanding attention. Outside, the village is still quiet. A rooster lets out a half-hearted crow. Another one answers from across the lane. Soon the whole feathery choir is in full voice. That's your alarm clock, whether you like it or not. Aelfric pulls on his wool tunic, rough like sandpaper but warm. Over that, a belt. On go his worn leather boots, cracked from years of walking through fields, mud and worse. He grabs his cap, more of a rag really, and steps outside. The air is cold and damp enough to cling to your skin. Mist drifts across the fields like ghosts looking for their shoes. You can smell wood smoke from other cottages and something less pleasant from the pigsty nearby. A couple of hens strut past him like they own the place. One of them squawks for no reason at all. Chickens are like that. Out in the open, the village begins to stir. A cartwheel creaks in the distance. Someone coughs. Another door opens and you hear a sleepy voice mumble something about the weather. And just like that, another day is unfolding. But before Aelfric heads to the fields, he takes a moment. Just a small one. He looks at the horizon where the sky is starting to blush. Faint oranges and soft pinks sneaking through the black. It's almost pretty in a quiet way, and it reminds him of something simple. This day, like every other, will be full of work. Hard, honest, back-breaking work. But it's also another chance. A chance to feed his family, maybe earn a little bread, and not get yelled at by the reeve. That last one is important. Back inside, Aldgytha is already preparing something for later, stirring a pot of barley with herbs. The kids yawn, rub their eyes, and start poking at each other. Agnes, unimpressed, chews a boot she found in the corner. Aldgytha takes it away before the damage gets too bad. This is life. Not grand, not glorious. There are no knights charging through or great feasts waiting at the table. No shining castles, just muddy boots, smoky rooms, and the same old fields waiting to be worked. And yet, there's a kind of peace here, a rhythm. It's not quiet because there's nothing. It's quiet because there's everything, just slower, softer, hidden in the cracks of a hard life. Aelfric steps out again, this time for good. He's got a wooden hoe slung over one shoulder and a chunk of bread in his hand. He takes a bite, chews slowly. It's dry and tough enough to chip a tooth, but he doesn't mind. It's food, and it means the day has begun. In the distance, the church bell gives a low clang. Just once, not to call anyone to prayer yet, but more like a reminder. Time is ticking, the sun is rising, the village is awake, and so is the world. And with that, Aelfric walks down the narrow path that cuts through the misty fields. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His day is ahead of him, full of sweat, dirt, and duty. But for now, for just a breath, there is only the hush before the world begins. Aelfric walks down the dirt path, boots crunching softly over frost-tipped grass. The mist still hangs low, curling around fence posts and tree stumps like it has nothing better to do. The fields stretch out in front of him, big, open, and familiar. They aren't his, not really, but he knows them like the back of his hand. You see, Aelfric is what's called a villain. It's not as scary as it sounds. It just means he's a peasant who's tied to the land. Not with chains or ropes, mind you, but with laws, customs, and a whole lot of rules that seem made to make life harder. He can't just pack up and move to the next village. That would be like a cow deciding to go on vacation. Doesn't happen. The land belongs to the lord of the manor, a man Aelfric rarely sees and honestly doesn't want to. The lord lives in a big stone hall up on the hill, behind wooden fences and guarded by a few men who look like they've never smiled in their lives. The lord has knights, a chapel, a cook, a falcon. Aelfric has a goat named Agnes and a sore back. Life is fair like that. Still, the system has its rules. The village, the land, the people, they all work like clockwork. Well, if the clock was made of wood and mud and occasionally stopped working during bad weather, Aelfric's job is to farm a strip of land that's his in the loosest possible way. The land is part of the open field system. Imagine one big field, but sliced into long, narrow strips, like someone went crazy with a bread knife. Each family gets a few strips scattered around, so nobody gets stuck with all the bad soil. It's fair, kind of, but it also means a lot of walking and complaining. There are 3 main fields in the village, one for planting wheat or rye, one for barley or oats, and one left to rest. That's called fallow. It gives the earth a break. Even dirt gets a day off, unlike Aelfric. So what does bound to the land really mean? It means Aelfric has to work his own strips of land to feed his family. But he also has to work the Lord's land too. That's called labour duty, or corvée. If the Lord wants a ditch dug, a road fixed, or a barn roof repaired, Aelfric gets the job. No pay, just the joy of serving his noble master. Lucky him. And if he wants to marry off his daughter, he has to ask the Lord's permission. Want to sell a pig? Better check with the bailiff. Want to leave the village forever and become a travelling juggler? That's a big no. Unless the Lord says yes, which he won't. It might sound rough, and it is. But this is the way things have been for longer than anyone can remember. Peasants don't ask, why is it like this? They ask, will it rain this week? Or is there enough barley left? The big questions are for priests and nobles. The small ones are for everyone else. And the small ones are what keep people alive. Aelfric walks past the edge of the village now. A low stone wall marks the manor boundary. Beyond it is the Lord's domain, the land the Lord keeps for himself. That's where Aelfric will spend tomorrow, most likely, ploughing or hauling manure. That's always a good one. He sighs and shakes his head. He'd laugh, but his back might not forgive him. In the distance, a cow moos. Probably Gertrude, the loud one. Aelfric nods at her like an old friend. Around here, animals are neighbours. You know their moods, their habits, their noises. Gertrude moos when she's hungry, or when it's cold, or when she just feels like talking. So basically, all the time. A bird chirps from a nearby tree. Another answers. Nature is wide awake now. The village might be small, but it's surrounded by life. Foxes in the woods, Badgers in the hills, birds overhead, and worms in the soil. Not that Aelfric spends much time admiring it. He's usually too busy trying to survive in it. He reaches his field. It's not much to look at, just a strip of earth, still damp from last night's rain. There's a wooden plough resting nearby, waiting to be dragged through the soil again. He'll need help from the oxen, who are currently doing their best impression of large, sleepy rocks. He pats one on the side. "Up, you lazy beast," he mutters. The ox blinks slowly. Motivation isn't its strong suit. While he waits, Aelfric glances at the sky. It's brighter now, pale blue peeking through the grey. He can see a few other villagers heading to their own strips, tools slung over their shoulders, heads down, no one in a rush. The day is long, there's no reason to sprint into it. That's the thing about being tied to the land. You're not just physically here, the land shapes you. Your life bends around the seasons, spring for sowing, summer for weeding, autumn for harvest, and winter for surviving it all. There's no such thing as retirement. You just work a little slower until one day you stop. But in all its roughness, there's also something strangely grounding. The land doesn't lie. If you don't sow, you don't eat. If you don't fix the fence, the sheep wander off. If you leave the fire out, the cold comes in. Simple rules. Harsh, yes, but clear. And that's why Aelfric keeps going. Not because it's easy, but because it's his. Well, sort of his. Enough to matter. Enough to make him get up before the sun. Enough to make him pat the ox a second time and start attaching the yoke. The plough creaks as he sets it in place. The ox grunts. Aelfric takes a deep breath, then calls out the same phrase he said 1,000 times before. "Walk on." The ox lurches forward, slowly dragging the plough through the soil. The first furrow breaks open, fresh and dark. Aelfric grips the handles, feet steady, eyes focused. This is the life he was born into. Not chosen, not earned, just given. But here, in this moment, with earth turning beneath his boots and the sky stretching overhead, it belongs to him all the same. The plough cuts into the soil like a knife through thick bread. Not fresh bread, mind you, the kind that sat by the hearth a little too long and could double as a weapon. Still, the ground gives way, turning in neat, heavy rows as Aelfric guides the ox forward. This is the heart of a peasant's life. Work, honest, dirty, slow-moving work. Not the kind that gets you applause or coins or your name in a book. Just the kind that keeps your family fed. And your lord slightly less grumpy. It doesn't matter if the sun is shining or the sky is spitting cold rain. The field doesn't care, the weeds don't take holidays. Neither does the soil, so Aelfric works. Like his father did, and his father's father. And probably even some distant ancestor with a beard and a wooden club. He grunts as he pushes the plough deeper. His hands are already sore. The wooden handles rub against calluses that never really go away. His shoulders burn from the effort. But he keeps going. Because stopping won't put food on the table, and because the reeve, who checks on everyone like a very nosy hawk, has a talent for showing up at the worst time. A few rows in, Aelfric pauses to wipe the sweat from his brow. It's not even mid-morning yet. He stretches, hears something in his back pop, and pretends it didn't happen. The ox gives him a look like, "Are we done yet?" "No, ox. No, we are not." He keeps at it, rhythm returning, step, pull, turn, over and over. The plough doesn't glide, it drags, bumps, and occasionally snags on a hidden rock. Aelfric curses under his breath, pulls it loose, and mutters something about the field having a personal grudge against him, which might not be far off. Elsewhere in the village, other peasants are just as busy. Down by the stream, a group is cutting reeds for thatching. Their hands are red from the cold water, their backs bent low. In another field, women are planting onions and garlic, fingers moving quickly, almost without thinking. Even children are at work, collecting firewood, chasing geese, trying to look useful while mostly getting in the way. No one is idle. That's not how life works here. If your hands aren't working, they'd better be praying. And if you're not doing either, well, the bailiff might assume you're up to something. But the work isn't all the same. It changes with the seasons, like chapters in a book that never ends. In spring you plant. In summer you weed. In autumn, you harvest. And in winter, you try not to freeze. Today, it's springtime. The earth is soft enough to turn, the sun starting to warm the air just enough to make you sweat under your wool. It's the beginning of hope, a new planting season, a new try at feeding everyone. No one ever says it out loud, but you can feel the tension. Will this year be better? Will the barley grow tall? Will the weather behave for once? Aelfric isn't a philosopher, but he knows the rhythm of the land. He knows when the earth smells right, when the wind feels wrong, when the birds are quieter than usual. These little signs guide the peasants more than books or maps ever could. He moves to the next row, then the next. His arms burn, but his mind drifts. He thinks about Aldgytha back home, probably spinning wool or baking flatbread. He thinks about his kids, climbing trees when they should be helping. He even thinks about Agnes the goat, who once ate half a tunic and still looked proud of herself afterward. It's in these moments, when your body is busy but your mind is floating, that you remember what matters. You don't dream about castles or feasts or riding off into battle. You just hope for a good harvest, a warm fire, maybe a day without back pain. He stops again, takes a sip from a leather flask hanging on his belt. It's ale, of course, thin and sour, but better than water from the stream, which often comes with surprise illnesses. He swishes it around, spits once, then wipes his mouth on his sleeve. Around him, the village is a hum of activity. Chickens cluck, oxen grunt, tools clink and scrape. It's not noisy, not in the way of towns or markets, but it's alive. Every sound has purpose, every movement is part of the larger machine that keeps the village turning. There's no clock here, no schedule written down. Time is measured by shadows, by the height of the sun, by the ache in your legs. When the sun hits the top of the old elm tree by the chapel, it's midday. That's when you stop, sit, and share whatever food you've brought. And maybe, just maybe, laugh about something if there's energy left for it. But for now, Aelfric keeps going. His hands are caked in soil, his tunic sticks to his back with sweat, his boots squelch with every step. It's hard, it's exhausting, and there's still half the field left. Yet even with all the aches and groans, there's something solid in this kind of life. The work is real. You can see the furrows behind you. You can measure the day in rows and footprints. There's no pretending, no trickery, just you, the land, and the tools in your hands. By the time the sun climbs higher, Aelfric's shoulders feel like someone's been using them for target practice. He lets out a long breath, stretches his back again, and rests his hands on the plough. He looks over the rows he's made, crooked in places but done with care. He nods once. That'll do for now. This is the life of the medieval peasant. One foot in front of the other, one row at a time. It's not glamorous, it's not easy, but it's steady. And in a world where everything else can shift without warning, lords, taxes, weather, illness, sometimes that's all you really need. The plough groans one last time as Aelfric leans it against a tree, done for the morning. The ox gives a relieved snort, probably wondering why breakfast didn't include a vacation. Aelfric wipes his hands on his tunic, smearing a new layer of mud on top of yesterday's. Now that the hardest part is over, well, the hardest so far, it's a good time to talk about tools. Because without them, even the strongest back wouldn't get very far. First, there's the plough itself. It's not fancy, just a wooden frame with a sharp iron tip called a coulter, meant to slice into the ground. Aelfric's plough is old. The wood creaks like it's telling stories from a past life, but it still works most of the time. He tries to oil the joints when he can, usually with animal fat, since there's no such thing as plough oil on the market. The plough doesn't move on its own. That's where the oxen come in, big, slow, and wonderfully stubborn. They aren't glamorous, but they pull like no one else. Horses are for knights and nobles. A peasant's best friend is a beast that moves at the speed of a half-asleep cloud and farts like thunder. That's an ox for you. Back at home, tools are everywhere, though not in neat rows on a wall. There's no toolbox, just bits of wood and iron tucked into corners and hanging from pegs. A flail for threshing grain, a sickle for cutting crops, a wooden rake, a dull knife or two, nothing shiny, nothing store-bought. If something breaks, you fix it, or figure out how to live without it. Aelfric remembers when his hoe snapped mid-swing last year. Took him 2 full evenings to carve a new handle out of elm. His hands were covered in blisters by the end, but the tool lived to dig another day. And honestly, it wasn't even a good handle, just good enough. That's the motto of peasant tools: good enough to work, not so good you'll cry when it breaks. Iron tools are valuable, really valuable. So valuable, in fact, that villages often share them. One blacksmith in town keeps the iron sharp, but he's busy, always grumbling about someone breaking a blade or needing a new horseshoe. Aelfric has learned to avoid the man when possible. He's friendly enough, once you get past the constant shouting and occasional hammer throwing. Then there's rope. Always needed, never enough. Rope ties up the oxen, holds your tools together, secures your cart, and sometimes patches your roof if things get desperate. A good piece of rope is worth nearly as much as a chicken. Maybe even more if the chicken is the kind that likes to escape and hide under furniture. The women of the village have their own tools too. Aldgytha, Aelfric's wife, uses a drop spindle to spin wool into yarn. She's got a loom as well, though it's really just a basic frame made from tree branches. She weaves fabric for their clothes, rough wool, coarse linen. Nothing fancy, but it keeps out the cold and covers what needs covering. She also has her grinding stone, which she uses every morning to turn barley into meal. It's a round slab with a smaller stone on top, worked in slow circles. A bit like making flour with your arms instead of a windmill. Her hands are just as rough as Aelfric's, maybe rougher. Her work never stops either. It just shifts from field to hearth and back again. Even the kids use tools, little wooden sticks sharpened at one end to poke at roots. Tiny baskets for gathering eggs or berries. One of the boys in the village once made a whistle from an old bone. It worked for about a week, until his mother took it away because the noise was driving everyone mad. No one has everything, but together the village has most things. That's how peasants survive. You borrow a shovel, you lend a knife. You help your neighbor patch their roof, and later they help you mend a fence. Not out of kindness exactly, though there's some of that too, but because if you don't work together, you don't make it. Simple as that. Toil is the other side of the coin. Tools are one thing, but without sweat, they're just wood and iron. Everything takes effort: ploughing, planting, harvesting. Even baking bread means first grinding the grain, mixing it with water, shaping it, letting it rise, if there's yeast, and then baking it over hot coals or in a clay oven. It's a process, one that takes hours, and there's no shortcut, no machines, no time-saving gadgets. If something needs doing, it gets done by hand. And if your hands are too tired, well, you do it anyway. Or you wait until you're a little less tired. Sometimes the work feels endless. Aelfric remembers one harvest where the rain came early. They had to cut the grain with sickles in a downpour, slipping in the mud, soaked to the skin, trying to gather enough before mold set in. Everyone was shivering. No one complained. There wasn't time for it. But even in all the toil, there are small victories. A row of freshly ploughed soil, neat and even. A fence post that finally stays upright. A worn-out tool that holds together just long enough to finish the job. These are the wins you collect, not trophies, but quiet, stubborn triumphs. Aelfric looks down at his hands. The dirt is deep in the lines now, like it's part of him. His fingers are swollen, a little stiff, but strong. He rolls his shoulders and picks up the hoe. There are weeds growing near the edge of the field, nasty little things that seem to grow faster than crops ever do. With a grunt, he swings the hoe down. Thunk, the root snaps, one less weed stealing water, one small moment of satisfaction. That's the truth of a peasant's day. It's not all big drama, it's not about glory, it's 1,000 small actions, done with worn hands and simple tools, over and over again. That's the rhythm of survival, and in that rhythm there's a kind of peace. Not rest, not yet, but something solid, something real. You don't need gold or armor or songs written about you. Sometimes all you need is a tool that works, a task that's done, and a moment to breathe. Aelfric wipes his brow and moves on. The weeds aren't going to pull themselves. The sun climbs a little higher in the sky now, warm enough to tease the edge of spring, but not warm enough to trust. Aelfric sits by a low stone wall, chewing the last of his bread. It's dry, very dry. He takes a sip of ale to help it go down, and even the ale seems tired. Still, it fills his belly enough to keep him going. Food, after all, is no small matter in the life of a medieval peasant. It isn't something you take for granted. It's the one thing that rules everything else: your work, your time, your hope. And it's never quite guaranteed. The truth is, hunger is always close by. Even in good years, it never wanders far. And in bad ones, it moves in and makes itself at home. Aelfric remembers the lean years. He was a boy when the harvest failed. Too much rain, too little sun. The grain rotted in the fields. The turnips turned to mush in the mud. People grew quiet that winter. Not sad exactly, just slow, like their thoughts were weighed down. Meals got smaller. Bellies stayed empty longer. Even Agnes the goat looked worried, and goats don't usually do feelings. This year looks better. The fields are waking up. The barley is sprouting in neat green rows, and the wheat shows promise, thin but straight. Still, nothing is certain until it's harvested, stored and eaten. Until then, it's all just hope with leaves on it. A peasant's meals aren't like the feasts you hear about in noble halls. No roasted swans, no glazed pies. Most days it's pottage, a kind of thick soup made with barley, beans, leeks, onions, maybe a scrap of meat if someone's been lucky or clever. You toss it all into a pot and let it simmer. The longer it cooks, the better it tastes, or at least the less it tastes like boiled sadness. There's bread too, coarse, dark and heavy, made from rye or barley, mixed with whatever flour you have on hand. Sometimes even ground up beans or oats go into it. And if you're really unlucky, a bit of grit from the millstone, which is great if you enjoy dental surprises. Aelfric's family bakes once or twice a week. The village has a communal oven run by the Lord's miller. You bring your dough, wait your turn, and hope it doesn't burn. You pay a small fee for the bake, or a portion of your flour. Everything comes with a price. Meat is rare, very rare. Chickens are more valuable for their eggs. Pigs are treasured until the day they're too fat to run. Cows are practically royalty. If you do eat meat, it's probably from trapping a rabbit or catching a fish. Or, more dangerously, poaching from the Lord's forest, which can earn you more than just a scolding. Think stocks, fines, even worse if you're caught twice. So most protein comes from dairy, milk, cheese, eggs. Peasants are experts at stretching food. Aldgytha knows how to make a broth from bones that have already been boiled twice. She can make a meal out of leftovers, herbs, and a little barley like she's working magic. She doesn't call it magic, of course, she just calls it dinner. Harvest time is the most important part of the year. It's when everything depends on timing, weather, and a lot of praying. The whole village joins in, men, women, children, even Agnes if she gets loose. The grain is cut with sickles and bundled into sheaves. Then it's threshed, beaten with flails to shake the seeds loose, and finally winnowed, tossing the grain into the wind to separate the good from the chaff. It takes days, sometimes weeks, and it's exhausting, but there's a kind of joy in it too. Singing songs as you work, joking with neighbors, knowing that every handful of grain means another meal, another chance at surviving the winter. But once the harvest is in, it doesn't all go to you. A large portion goes to the Lord, your rent in grain. Then a tenth goes to the church, the tithe. What's left is yours. If you're lucky, it's enough. If you're not, well, you learn to get creative with turnips. There's something called the hungry gap. The weeks in late winter and early spring when last year's stores are low and the new crops haven't grown yet. That's when hunger creeps in again. Meals get smaller, soup gets thinner, and everyone counts the days until green shoots appear. Aelfric once spent 2 weeks eating almost nothing but onions and nettle soup. Not his favorite memory, but it kept him standing. Sometimes there's a feast, on holy days or weddings. Then you might get something special, honey cakes, dried fruits, or meat stewed with herbs. But those are rare. Celebrations in the village are like sunbreaks in a stormy season, brief, bright, and gone too soon. What keeps people going isn't the taste of the food, it's the meaning of it. Every bite is a victory. Every warm bowl is proof that the work was worth it, that the field gave something back. Now, sitting on the edge of his field, Aelfric looks at a bit of smoked bacon he saved from last month's market day. Just a scrap. He breaks it in half and wraps the rest for later. You don't eat it all at once, not when it's this rare. He chews slowly, eyes watching the wind ripple through the barley. In the distance, he hears someone calling their child. A baby crying, a dog barking at a goose. Life, loud and regular as ever. Agnes the goat trots past, chewing on what looks like someone's laundry. Aelfric sighs. Again, he pushes himself up, bones creaking like old wood. His stomach is fuller now, but not full. Not really. It rarely is. But it's enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to finish the day. That's the peasant way. You don't aim for comfort. You aim for enough. Enough food, enough firewood, enough strength. And if you have a little extra, maybe you share. Maybe you save it. Maybe, just maybe, you smile. Because in a world where hunger is always watching, every meal is a quiet kind of triumph. The sun has shifted slightly, casting longer shadows across the fields. Aelfric wipes his brow with a sleeve already stiff from dried sweat and soil. Just as he considers taking a short break, he hears it. The clang of the manor bell. Not the church bell, the manor bell. That's a different sound entirely. Lower, heavier, and full of meaning. Usually it means one thing. The Lord wants something. Aelfric groans, not dramatically, but the sort of quiet groan a man makes when he knows he doesn't really have a choice. He looks over at his ox, who gives him a blank stare, then goes back to chewing. The ox isn't invited, just Aelfric. So he grabs his cloak and trudges toward the manor. The Lord, Sir Godwyn de Morestone, is a man of fine robes, a thick beard, and absolutely no understanding of peasant life. Aelfric has only seen him a handful of times, during harvest tally, tax day, and once when his horse sneezed and he blamed it on bad peasant air. Still, as the lord of the manor, Godwyn owns everything in sight. The fields, the woods, the cottages, even Agnes the goat technically, though Aelfric likes to think she'd bite him if he tried to prove it. Being a villain, Aelfric owes more than just a portion of his harvest. He also owes labour, unpaid labour of course. It's called the corvée, a fancy French word that sounds much nicer than what it actually is. Working for the Lord without getting anything in return except the chance to not be punished. Today the job is road repair. A dirt path near the manor has turned into a swampy mess from last week's rain. The steward says it must be fixed with great haste, which basically means get muddy now. Aelfric joins a small group of other peasants already gathering by the road. There's Wolf, the smith's son, with arms like tree trunks and the personality of a soggy boot. There's Elric, who always seems half asleep, but somehow gets more work done than anyone else. And there's Hilda, who isn't even required to be here, but shows up anyway because, in her words, someone's got to tell the men when they're doing it wrong. They dig trenches, lay stones, and try to redirect the water. It's miserable work. The mud sucks at their boots like it's trying to eat them whole. Someone slips and lands face first, and the group takes a break just long enough to laugh. Even Aelfric cracks a smile. No one is doing this for fun. They're doing it because they must. If you refuse the corvée, you risk fines, punishment, or worse, land taken away, or a visit from the bailiff. And no one wants that. The bailiff, in fact, is already there, standing with arms crossed, watching like a hawk with a headache. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, it's always a command. Faster. Deeper. Lift with your legs, not your back, unless you like crawling. It's not that the bailiff enjoys being unpleasant. It's just that he's very good at it. He's not a noble, not really. But he acts like one when he can. His job is to make sure the manor runs smoothly, which usually means making sure peasants run quickly. Once, Aelfric tried asking the bailiff if they could postpone a job until after the harvest. The answer was a long, cold stare. That was enough. But not every demand is about roads or ditches. Sometimes the Lord needs grain carted to the mill, trees cut for firewood, or new walls built around the pig pens. Sometimes it's just lifting heavy things from one spot to another while the steward waves a list around and says, "Hurry now." And once a year, there's the boon work. That's when the entire village helps with the Lord's harvest. It's a big event, full of shouting, sweating, and hoping the sun doesn't disappear halfway through. No one gets paid, but if you do it wrong or too slowly, you might get less grain in return. So in a way, the reward for working hard is not getting less food, motivating stuff. Even weddings aren't safe from the Lord's reach. If Aelfric wanted to marry off his daughter in a few years, he'd need the Lord's blessing. That usually involves a fee. Even love costs something around here, and heaven forbid you want to move. Leaving the manor without permission is forbidden. You're not just a worker, you're part of the land, like a tree, or a rock, or again, Agnes. It might seem unfair, and it is, but this is just the way things are. The whole system runs on power. At the top, the king, then the nobles, then the knights, then the lords of the manor, and then, at the very bottom, with muddy boots and a sore back, folks like Aelfric. But peasants aren't stupid. They know the system. They joke about it. They roll their eyes behind the steward's back. They find little ways to win. Share tools, trade favors, hide a few extra onions when the taxman isn't looking. Nothing big, nothing bold, just survival, dressed up as cleverness. By late afternoon, the road looks slightly less terrible. The bailiff grunts in approval. That'll hold till the next storm, he mutters, and walks away. Which from him is practically poetry. Aelfric gathers his tools, every muscle complaining as he stands. Wolf slaps him on the back, a little too hard. Hilda makes a joke about the bailiff's boots being cleaner than the road. They laugh, just a little, because despite it all, the demands, the labour, the endless rules, there's still room for laughter, still room for stubbornness, still room for people like Aelfric to find meaning in a life they didn't choose but live anyway. And as he walks back toward home, the village rising ahead in the golden light, Aelfric thinks to himself, at least the road is passable again. At least no one was fined today. And at least Agnes hasn't eaten the laundry. Yet, at last, the sun is high. Not the soft glow of early morning, but a bright, honest light that makes the sweat sting and the soil look almost golden. It's the time when everything slows down for just a little while. Even the birds seem to take a break. This is the midday rest. Aelfric makes his way to a shady spot beneath an old elm tree near the edge of the fields. The tree's seen more seasons than any man in the village. It's bent and lopsided, but it still offers enough shade to hide in. Aelfric drops his sack beside the roots, stretches his back with a wince, and eases himself down onto the grass. His cloak doubles as a cushion, though cushion is a generous word. It's more like slightly less uncomfortable cloth. Still, it beats sitting in the mud. Around him, other villagers are doing the same, finding patches of shade, settling on stones, tree roots, or even bits of hay if they're lucky. Tools are set aside, boots are kicked off. For a moment, no one is working, and that's a rare thing. Midday rest doesn't last long. Maybe an hour, sometimes less. But it's one of the few pauses in the day where you're allowed to just be. No digging, no ploughing, no hauling. Just eating, talking, and letting your arms stop feeling like sacks of barley. Aelfric opens his sack and pulls out his midday meal. A lump of rye bread, a small wedge of cheese, and a boiled egg wrapped in cloth. He peels the egg slowly, careful not to drop it. You don't waste eggs. Not ever, especially not when the hen who laid it pecks like a demon. He eats in slow bites. The bread is dry but filling. The cheese smells like old socks, but tastes better than it looks. The egg is the prize of the meal, soft, warm, and satisfying. Beside him, Wolf is tearing into a bit of cold pottage he brought in a jar. Hilda, always better prepared, has a whole cloth of roasted onions and flatbread. She waves a piece under Aelfric's nose and raises an eyebrow. "Trade you half an onion for that eggshell," she jokes. Aelfric grins. Tempting, but no. Nearby, someone breaks into a quiet song. Just a hum at first, then a few words. A ballad about a knight who falls in love with a baker's daughter. Completely unrealistic. Bakers don't trust knights, but it passes the time. This is when the village feels most like itself. Not when it's working, or praying, or rushing to meet a demand, but when it's still. When people share what little they have. When stories get passed around like bread. When gossip flows faster than the stream. "Did you hear," someone says, "that old Matilda saw a fox sneaking into the henhouse again?" Probably just her shadow. Someone else mutters. They say the Lord Steward is planning another grain count, says another. That gets groans all around. Nobody likes the steward. He counts everything twice, then acts surprised when you're still poor. Aelfric leans back on his elbows, watching a few clouds drift overhead. One of them looks like a goose. Another looks like a sack of turnips, which is probably just his stomach talking. He remembers days like this from his youth, his father resting under the same tree, cracking jokes with neighbors, throwing pebbles at a crow that kept stealing their food. Back then, rest time felt like a game. Now it feels like medicine. He looks over at Aelfric, the quiet one who's napping already, hat pulled down over his eyes. The man could sleep on a pile of rocks and wake up smiling. Aelfric envies him sometimes. Midday rest is also when small repairs get done. Someone's patching a shoe with a needle and thread. Someone else is sharpening a blade on a stone. A few kids are chasing each other through the grass, their laughter light and free. They'll grow up soon enough, but for now, they run. Aelfric takes out his knife and carves a new notch into the wooden handle of his hoe. He does this every week, not because it needs it, but because it gives his hand something to do. The handle is full of notches now, years of small pauses marked by tiny cuts. Sometimes a traveller might pass by during rest time, a tinker with pans, a monk on foot, a merchant if you're lucky. Today it's a skinny peddler with a bag of pins, ribbons and a broken smile. He waves, calls out greetings and offers a piece of hard candy to one of the children. No one buys anything, but they let him rest. That's the rule. If someone's walking and you're sitting, you share the shade, even if they talk too much. Aelfric's eyes grow heavy for a moment. The food is sitting warm in his belly. The grass is soft. The sun filters through the tree leaves in dappled light, like the world is blinking slowly. He doesn't sleep. Not quite. Just rests with his eyes closed, listening to the low hum of village life. He can hear the wind in the grass, the soft clink of a tool dropped by accident, the distant call of a hawk. These are the moments you don't write songs about, but they matter more than people think. Eventually, someone stands up and stretches. Back to it, they mutter. And just like that, the spell is broken. People rise, sackcloths are folded, breadcrumbs are brushed off, tools are picked up. The pause ends, and the rhythm begins again. Aelfric stands, knees popping like twigs. He takes one last look at the sky, just blue now, no turnips, and smiles to himself. Midday is over. The rest of the day lies ahead, full of work, sweat and dirt. But for a little while they stopped. They shared. They laughed. And sometimes that's enough. The afternoon carries on, sun slipping slowly across the sky like it's in no rush to reach evening. Aelfric wipes dirt from his hands and straightens his back, which loudly objects to the idea. The work is far from over, but something happens that stops him in his tracks. Bong! The deep, slow toll of the church bell rolls across the village like thunder made of iron. It's not an alarm, it's not a warning, it's something older and heavier, something that reaches into your bones and says, "Pay attention." Aelfric leans on his hoe and listens. Bong! The bell comes from the village church, a small stone building near the centre of town. It's nothing grand. The roof leaks, the door creaks, the stained glass is more like coloured fog. But it's the heart of the village. Every birth, death, marriage and miracle passes through that church. And the bell, well, it speaks louder than any priest. Right now, it's tolling for none of those things. It's simply the hour, mid-afternoon. A holy pause, time for a short prayer. A quick thought about the soul, a reminder that the body may work, but the spirit is watching too. Aelfric sets down his tools and makes the sign of the cross, more out of habit than anything. Around the fields, other workers stop too. Some kneel, some bow their heads, some just stand quietly, eyes closed, breathing slowly. For a few moments, the fields go still. Even the birds seem to hush. Even Agnes the goat, chewing a stick nearby, glances up like she's not quite sure what's happening. Faith is part of everything here. It's not just something you do on Sundays, it shapes the whole year. The calendar isn't marked with birthdays or festivals from faraway cities. It's filled with saint days, feast days, fasts and holy observances. There are dozens of saints to keep track of. Saint Swithin for rain, Saint Blaise for sore throats, Saint Apollonia for toothaches. If it hurts, breaks or falls apart, chances are there's a saint in charge of it. And then, of course, there's the church itself. Not just the building, but the people and power behind it. The priest in the village, Father Edwin, is a kind man with more beard than teeth. He smells like candle wax and old books, and he always seems surprised when his sermons actually put people to sleep. Still, he does his best. He hears confessions, he gives blessings. He reminds people that suffering is holy, which is something peasants hear a lot. The church owns land. It collects tithes, 1/10 of everything a peasant earns, gathers or grows. If you bring in 10 sacks of barley, one of them goes to the church. If you butcher a pig, they get a piece. Even eggs, milk and wool must be shared. No one likes giving it up. But everyone does, because not doing so is unthinkable. Dangerous even. It's not just about fear, it's about belief. Deep down, Aelfric believes, like most villagers, that the world is watched by something greater, and if you don't do your part, that something might turn its back on you. So the bell tolls, and the village listens. There are holy days when no work is allowed, feast days when everyone gathers for prayer and song, and fast days, lots of fast days, when meat is forbidden and you eat fish or dried peas, or if you're unlucky, just stale bread and thoughts. And then there's confession. Aelfric isn't proud of everything he's done. He remembers the time he borrowed a neighbour's chicken because his own had stopped laying, or the time he may have exaggerated his barley yield to the steward, or that time he said something unkind about the bailiff's face, which, to be fair, is asking for it. He tells all this to Father Edwin. The priest nods, mumbles a few Latin phrases, and tells him to say a prayer, maybe light a candle. Aelfric does, and walks away feeling a little lighter, if not entirely innocent. For many peasants, religion is comfort. When the harvest fails, it's because God is testing them. When a baby is born healthy, it's because of a saint's blessing. When life is hard, and it always is, faith is what gives it shape. There are stories passed down from mouth to mouth about miracles. A blind woman who saw the Virgin in a dream and woke with her sight. A boy who fell in a river and was carried safely to shore by an angel. A loaf of bread that fed an entire family for a week after being blessed. Aelfric doesn't know if they're true, but they're nice to think about, especially on days when the fields are dry and the sky looks angry. Bong. The final toll of the bell echoes across the valley. Slowly, the world starts moving again. Tools are lifted, ploughs return to the soil, someone sneezes, someone coughs. Agnes bleats like she just remembered something urgent. Aelfric lifts his hoe again, shoulders aching, but heart a little steadier. It's not just about the crops, or the sweat, or even the bread. It's about believing there's more, that the pain has a purpose, that there's someone, something, watching, weighing, and maybe even helping. Even if it's just a bell in a small stone church, it reminds him he's part of something bigger. Not a knight, not a noble, just a man with muddy boots, a hungry goat, and a soul he hopes is still in good standing. He gets back to work, the earth soft beneath his feet. Tomorrow the bell will toll again, while Aelfric is out in the fields, swinging his hoe like a tired warrior with poor aim. There's a whole other world unfolding back home, a world of spinning wheels, steaming pots, and voices that never stop moving. It's the women's world, and it runs just as hard, just as fast, and just as non-stop as the work in the fields. Maybe even more so. Aldgytha, Aelfric's wife, is already deep into her third chore of the day, possibly her fifth. No one's quite sure anymore. She's kneeling near the hearth, scraping burnt oats from the bottom of a clay pot with a spoon that's seen better centuries. The baby is crying in the corner. The goat, yes, Agnes again, has wandered inside. Again, and the older child is stomping around wearing a turnip bucket like a helmet. Typical Thursday. Unlike Aelfric, Aldgytha's job doesn't start with the sunrise and end at sunset. It starts with the sunrise and continues past sunset, through the moonrise, and sometimes all the way into the next sunrise. That's because women's work isn't just one job. It's all the jobs. First, there's food. Aldgytha's been up since dawn, checking the barley, skimming curds off milk, and mixing a thin batter for flatbread. She's stirred pottage, seasoned it with wild herbs, and added a tiny bit of bacon scrap. Today is a lucky day. Next, there's the fire. The hearth must stay lit. No fire means no food, no warmth, and no hot water for washing. Keeping the fire going is a constant battle. Wood must be gathered, chopped, and dried. Embers must be kept alive through the night. Blowing gently into the ashes before dawn becomes as natural as breathing. Then there's spinning. Wool from sheep is cleaned, combed, and twisted into thread on a drop spindle. It looks simple, but it isn't. The rhythm must be steady, the thread must be smooth, and your arms must be strong, or at least stubborn. That thread becomes yarn, and the yarn becomes cloth, woven on a loom, stitched by hand, cut into tunics, aprons, or cloaks. There are no fashion statements here, just survival stitched into every seam. Aldgytha also brews ale. Yes, ale. That weak, cloudy drink everyone swigs all day long is usually made by the women. It starts with barley, soaked and sprouted, then boiled, then cooled, then fermented in wooden barrels. It smells like wet grain and old socks, but it's safer than water and better than thirst. Laundry, also hers. There's no soap like today's. Instead, she boils clothes with wood ash, scrubs them on rough boards, and hangs them over branches or lines. If it rains, too bad. If a chicken perches on the drying cloth, even worse. And the children. Oh, the children. They help, of course, or they're supposed to. But help often looks like a toddler carrying an egg halfway across the room before dropping it, crying, then blaming the goat. Again. Still, Aldgytha teaches them as she works, how to spin, how to brew, how to recognize edible herbs from poisonous ones, how to mend a tear or sweep out the dirt without chasing it into another corner. Every daughter learns to do these things. Every son learns a bit too, enough to survive when no one else is around. It's not a classroom, it's life. And when the day isn't already full, there's more. Tending the garden, feeding the chickens, milking the goat, churning butter, salting meat for winter, darning socks, braiding ropes, making rushlight candles from leftover fat, organizing the pantry, such as it is, telling bedtime stories, bandaging scraped knees, scolding Agnes. It's not glamorous, it's not quiet, but it keeps the household running. If Aelfric brings home grain, Aldgytha makes it edible. If he brings meat, she makes it last. If he brings problems, which happens more often than he admits, she solves them. Women don't get songs written about them, no ballads of Lady Aldgytha of the endless to-do list. But without them, the village would fall apart faster than a leaky thatch roof in a rainstorm. Even the church, with all its rules, recognizes women's labor. Nuns run their own convents, brew their own ales, and write their own manuscripts. Not that Aldgytha has time to read one. If she ever had a full day off, she'd probably just nap in the haystack and refuse to come out. She doesn't complain, not often. There's no time for it. But she has her ways of showing strength. A certain look, a firm word, a perfectly timed raised eyebrow that can silence 3 children, a dog, and her husband all at once. She has friends too, other women in the village. They work together, share food, exchange stories, gossip a little, laugh more than you'd expect. Some of the loudest laughter in the village comes from the women gathered around the spinning circle, teasing each other while their hands never stop moving. Their work is endless, but it's also powerful. Behind every field ploughed by a man is a meal cooked by a woman. Behind every child swinging a stick and chasing geese is a mother who taught them where not to swing. And behind every quiet, candle-lit home is a woman who chopped the wood, lit the fire, and kept the wind out with clever fingers. As the afternoon deepens, Aldgytha sets her spinning aside for a moment. The baby's asleep now. The fire is steady. The pot is bubbling. For just a second, she allows herself to sit still. She listens to the wind outside, the low voices of children in the lane, the soft creak of the roof, a goat chewing something suspicious in the corner. It's not peace exactly, but it's enough. Soon the chores will begin again. Dinner will need stirring. The eldest will need scolding. A tunic must be mended before tomorrow. But for now, Aldgytha rests. A queen without a crown, a general without an army, just a woman in a stone cottage holding the world together with thread and firewood. And somehow, doing it all with one hand while holding a child in the other. By late afternoon, the village is buzzing like a beehive. Not loud, not rushed, but steady, full of life in quiet motion. Children run through muddy lanes, chickens peck under hedges, and smoke curls from crooked chimneys into the soft blue sky. Everyone is doing something, or watching someone else do it. This is the village, a cluster of thatched roofs, packed earth walls, leaning fences and winding paths. And it may look like just a bunch of houses in a field, but it's much more than that. It's a web, tied together by duty, trust, rumor, habit, and maybe the occasional borrowed chicken. Aelfric walks back from the fields, hoe slung over one shoulder, arms sore but mind alert. He passes familiar faces along the path, faces he's seen every day of his life. There's Bjorn the thatcher, muttering to himself as he fixes a leaky roof. There's Mildrith, arms full of turnips, trying not to drop them, while also arguing with her 3 children about who actually took the missing pie. Everyone knows it was the dog. The dog knows it was the dog. The thing about village life is that no one lives in isolation. You can't. You're part of everything, whether you want to be or not. Everyone knows your name, your habits, your cow's name, and possibly even your cow's habits. If your fence falls down, your neighbor might lend you a hammer, along with 5 minutes of unsolicited advice. If your fire goes out, someone offers embers. If you're caught sneezing too often, someone shows up with garlic and tells you to wear it around your neck for the next week. Gossip travels faster than the plague. Aelfric once sneezed twice in a row, and by the time he reached the well, someone was already praying for his soul. Still, the village web holds strong. It's built on more than rumors. It's built on cooperation. The land isn't worked alone. Fences are mended together. Carts are repaired in teams. Pigs are shared. Tools are borrowed. Bread is traded. If someone's roof blows off in a storm, you don't ask whose job it is. You just grab some straw and show up. There's no bank, no police, no manager, just people, some kind, some cranky, but all tangled up in the same struggle. At the center of the web is the common green, a patch of open land used for grazing animals, hosting markets, and letting children run around while their parents shout from nearby doors. Today, a few women are spinning wool near the edge of the green. Their fingers move fast while their mouths move faster. They talk about the weather, the sheep, the new tinker who passed through last week, and whether or not old Ethelred's beard is cursed. It probably isn't, but it is unnaturally thick. Nearby, 2 men argue about which saint protects cabbages, Saint Fiacre or Saint Gildas. Neither knows for sure, but both are ready to defend their cabbage theology to the death. Over by the well, a girl drops her bucket and splashes herself from chin to knees. She shrieks. Everyone laughs. Except her. She pouts. An older woman hands her a dry cloth and mutters something about youthful foolishness, though she was once that exact girl with the same exact bucket. The village has its leaders too. The reeve keeps track of who owes what. The haywood keeps watch over the fields and fences. The ale taster, yes, that's a real job, makes sure no one's brewing anything so terrible it causes blindness. He's both respected and slightly feared. His face is permanently stuck in a squint. But leadership here isn't about bossing. It's about balance. Too much pressure and the web snaps. Too little and it falls apart. Aelfric passes by the village oven where bread is being baked in shifts. The smell is heavenly, yeasty and warm with just a hint of smoke. He peeks in and sees a small crowd waiting for their loaves, chatting as they shuffle in the warm air. Then there's the manor hall, the big house on the rise, the lord's home. It sits apart, towering just slightly, with wooden fences and guards, and a garden full of herbs no one else can afford. The manor is part of the village, but not of it. Its weight is always felt, but its door is rarely knocked on, unless by duty or bad luck. Aelfric doesn't go near it today. He's had enough lordly business for 1 week. Besides, there are better places to be, like the alehouse. Ah, the alehouse. Just a small cottage, really. Someone's front room turned into a gathering spot. A bench or two, a table, and a barrel of whatever ale's been brewed this week. It's warm, noisy, and smells like people who've been working too hard and washing too little. Aelfric steps inside, Wolf is already there, halfway through a mug, telling a dramatic story about chasing off a wolf with nothing but a shovel. Hilda rolls her eyes and asks how big the wolf was. Smaller than Agnes, she suspects. Someone hands Aelfric a mug. It's thick, sour ale, barely stronger than soup, but it tastes like rest. He sits, he drinks, he listens. This is how villages hold together, not just through shared work, but shared breath. Shared bread, shared laughter, even when there's not much to laugh about. Even when the days are long and the winters longer. Out there in the fields, it's about survival. In here, it's about being human. No one is rich, no one is famous. But everyone matters. If you fall sick, someone checks in. If you lose your ox, someone helps search. If you drop your bucket down the well, someone, eventually, helps fish it out. The village isn't perfect. People argue, grumble, occasionally throw a turnip. But it works, because it has to. As the evening draws near, Aelfric finishes his ale and steps back into the lane. The sky is tinged with gold now. Smoke curls higher. A rooster crows, confused. Someone sings off-key in the distance. The village breathes in, breathes out. Tied by dirt, bound by stories, woven together like the strongest rope. The village web holds. Evening is creeping in now. The sun sinks lower, casting long, soft shadows across the fields and cottages. The golden light makes everything look almost peaceful, like a painting you'd hang above a hearth if peasants had the time, money, or walls fancy enough for art. But behind that calm glow, there's something else. A weight, a feeling. It's the presence of something bigger, quieter, and not entirely visible. Power, not the kind Aelfric swings with his hoe, not the kind you feel when your loaf of bread turns out perfect. This is the other kind. The kind that lives above and far away, but still finds its way into the village, like a cold wind that sneaks under the door. It starts with the Lord, of course, Sir Godwin de Moristone. He owns the land, the rights, the mill, and technically the people. He's not cruel, at least not compared to stories you hear. But he's not kind either. He is distant, like a weather system. He blows in, makes things harder, then disappears again. He doesn't handle the day-to-day. That's what the bailiff is for, and the steward, and the reeve. Aelfric sees them often. Godwin? Not so much. Maybe on a feast day, or when taxes are due, or when his dog runs into the village and scares the chickens. That was a dramatic Tuesday. But even without seeing him, everyone feels his hand. In the rules, the rents, the work owed. His hall casts a long shadow, stone and timber, guarded by men with swords, none of whom know how to smile. Above the Lord is the king. Not that Aelfric has ever seen a king. He's not even sure what this one looks like. People say he's strong, others say he's ill. Some say he's off fighting in France. All Aelfric knows is that the king's name shows up on taxes, and sometimes men are pulled from villages to fight in wars that feel as far away as the moon. Rumors come and go. There's been a battle in the south. The Danes are raiding again. The king is building a new castle with money from the peasants. Some of it's true, some of it's nonsense. But truth isn't what matters most. Fear is. Fear that the next demand will be heavier than the last. Fear that soldiers might come through and take what little you have. Fear that your name might end up on some scroll in a nobleman's hall next to a number with a pound sign in front of it. Aelfric doesn't bother with politics. He's too busy keeping food on the table and rain out of the roof. But he knows this much. Decisions made far away don't stay far away. They roll downhill, and peasants live at the bottom of the hill. Take taxes. There's the tithe for the church, the grain due to the Lord, the rent for your cottage, and on top of that, a royal tax every so often. For defense, they say. Aelfric isn't sure what he's defending. Maybe a castle somewhere, maybe a knight's wardrobe. Then there are the forests. The king and the lord both claim rights to the big ones. Hunting there without permission is poaching. Cutting wood without approval is theft. Never mind that your family's been gathering kindling there for generations. Aelfric once heard of a man, 2 villages over, who got caught with a snared rabbit. The punishment? Stocks for 2 days and a fine he couldn't pay. His wife had to sell her best cloak to cover it. They don't snare anymore. And yet, sometimes the shadows get heavier. A knight rides through on a warhorse, armor gleaming, eyes cold. The children stare, mouths open. The men nod, but don't speak. The women step back into doorways. The knight says nothing, just rides through like the village is a blur beneath his boots. Or worse, word spreads of war, of men taken for service, of a neighboring manor burned down over a dispute between nobles. Not peasants fighting peasants, but lords punishing lords, with villagers caught in the middle like grass trampled by bulls. No one asks for a peasant's opinion. No one checks if they can afford to lose a son or a harvest. Orders are orders, and refusal is a luxury peasants can't afford. But here's the strange part. For all the weight pressing down from above, the village stands. It doesn't crumble. It bends. It grumbles. It adapts. Peasants are nothing if not resilient. They find ways to live between the cracks of power. They tell jokes about the Lord's waistline. They roll their eyes at the steward's shiny boots. They warn their children that if they lie, they'll grow up to become a tax collector. Fear becomes humor. Anger becomes endurance. They also listen, not just to bells or orders, but to each other. If someone hears that soldiers are coming, the whole village prepares. Hides tools, moves livestock, spreads warnings to neighbors, like ants scattering at the first tremble of a footstep. Because while power may flow from castles and crowns, it's the peasants who understand what it means to survive it. As evening deepens, Aelfric looks up at the manor on the hill. The windows flicker with firelight. A dog barks. Somewhere in that hall, someone is eating meat off a golden plate. Aelfric, meanwhile, has turnip stew waiting, and honestly, he prefers it. The golden plate would just make him nervous. He doesn't hate the Lord. He doesn't dream of rebellion. He dreams of enough grain to last the winter, of his children growing up safe, of waking up one morning without new taxes or new orders. The shadows of power are always there, but so is the strength beneath them. Peasants are quiet, but not weak. They work, they endure, they remember, and they keep walking forward, even when the weight is heavy. The sky begins to change. The bright blue fades into deep oranges and purples, as if the sun has brushed the clouds with old berry juice. The fields, once full of life and movement, are now quiet. Just a few scattered figures making their way home, steps slow, shoulders heavy, tools swinging low by their sides. Aelfric stands for a moment at the edge of the lane, staring out across the land he's worked since dawn. The soil is cool now, the wind a little sharper. It's that gentle time, neither day nor night, when everything starts to hush. He picks up his hoe and starts the walk home. His boots are coated in dried mud. His hands are stained, scraped and tired. His tunic clings with sweat and dust. But his work is done, at least for today. The village begins to fold in on itself. Doors creak shut. Smoke thickens from chimneys. You can hear the thump of buckets at the well, the low murmur of prayers, the occasional squawk of a goose who hasn't figured out bedtime. At Aelfric's cottage, Aldgytha is already inside, stirring a pot that smells of onions, wild herbs, and maybe a bit of leftover bacon grease, if today's luck hasn't completely run dry. The fire crackles gently, lighting the stone walls in soft orange. The baby snoozes in a bundle of old cloth near the hearth, and the older child sits cross-legged, trying to carve a whistle from a stick, despite being told no whistles in the house at least 10 times this week. Agnes the goat is, somehow, already inside, chewing on something suspicious in the corner. Aelfric steps through the doorway, ducking slightly as the low beam greets him with a friendly knock to the forehead. He leans his hoe beside the door, pulls off his boots, and lets out a sound that's half sigh, half groan, all relief. "Good day?" Aldgytha asks without turning from the pot. "Long," he answers, rubbing his back. "That road didn't fix itself, sadly." She nods. "Dinner's nearly ready. Wash your hands before you touch anything, and get the goat out." Aelfric crouches, grabs Agnes gently by the horns, and steers her out the door. She protests with a snort, then plops herself just outside like a woolly guard dog. Inside, the warmth is comforting, the flickering fire, the bubbling stew, the closeness of it all. The cottage may be small, one room, low ceiling, smoky corners, But in the evening, it feels like a safe place, like the world outside can wait till morning. Dinner is served in wooden bowls, just stew and a chunk of bread each. No ceremony, no extra, but it's hot and it fills the belly. The family eats together, sitting on straw mats and low stools, passing the salt, dipping the bread, and occasionally batting the child's hand away from trying to fish in the pot. There's talk of the day. Aelfric tells a half-funny story about Wolf falling into a puddle and blaming it on an invisible pig. Aldgytha shakes her head. The child laughs, even the baby gurgles. After dinner, the bowls are wiped clean, no wasting, and the pot is refilled with water for the next use. Ashes from the fire are pushed aside to find the glowing embers underneath. A few more sticks are added. The fire never fully goes out, not if you can help it. Outside, the world turns darker. The stars begin to peek out, just a few, scattered like crumbs in the sky. The moon rises behind the trees, half full and quiet. An owl calls from the forest. A dog barks somewhere near the manor, distant, faint. Evening in the village is different from the day. It moves slower, softer. Voices are quieter, movements gentler. The day belongs to the work, the night belongs to rest, or at least preparation for rest. Aldgytha starts spinning by the fire, fingers deftly turning wool into thread. Aelfric checks a loose plank near the door, hammering it gently into place. The older child, now done pretending to be a tree warrior, curls up beside the goat just outside the door, blanket in tow. Stories begin. Not the grand kind with dragons and kings, though those have their place. No, tonight it's smaller tales, of saints who turned water to wine, of a farmer who grew turnips the size of dogs, of a ghost who haunted the mill and only stopped when someone baked it a loaf of bread. Everyone has a story. Some are silly, some are warnings, some are just noise to keep the dark at bay. Aelfric tells one about a clever fox who tricked a knight into giving up his boots. The child giggles, eyes wide. Aldgytha smirks. The fire snaps in approval. Eventually, the spinning stops. The hammer is put away. The fire dies down to a soft glow. The cottage becomes a place of whispers and yawns. The bedding is simple. Bundles of straw, old blankets, patched up cloth. Everyone sleeps in the same room. There's no privacy, but there is warmth. The baby is tucked in between parents. The older child curls up at the foot. Agnes is still at the door, mumbling goat complaints in her sleep. Before they lie down, Aldgytha whispers a short prayer. Just a few words for protection, for rest, for another day tomorrow. Aelfric mutters something too, though no one can hear it. It might be a blessing. It might be a to-do list. Then the light is gone. Just darkness, deep and complete. The kind of dark where you can't see your hand in front of your face, but you know exactly where it is. The kind of dark where the mind can finally slow down, where the aches start to ease, where the soul, tired from all its earthly trouble, can float a little. Night has come. The village sleeps. But even in sleep, life continues. The fire glows faintly. The wind taps the shutters. The owl watches. The stars turn overhead. And in the heart of it all, in a cottage with a smoky roof and a stubborn goat, a family rests, wrapped in warmth, in straw, in each other. Because in this world, rest is rare. And when it comes, you hold on to it like treasure. The fire has settled into soft, glowing coals. The kind of warmth that no longer dances but lingers, quiet, low, steady. Most of the village has gone to sleep, but in a few cottages, small things still stir. A wooden mug is passed from hand to hand. A tale is told for the 50th time. Someone laughs a little too loud before remembering what hour it is. This is the hour of ale, stories, and silence. Not everyone goes to bed at once. After a day of endless labor, some villagers squeeze out a final moment to just be still. And often that moment comes with ale. Not strong ale, the good stuff is rare and saved for festivals or weddings, but a thin, homemade brew, cloudy, warm, and a little sour, brewed by hand, bucket by bucket, with grain that wasn't quite good enough for bread. Some call it small ale, others just call it safe to drink. Tonight, Aelfric sits with Wolf and old Edith, the midwife, outside the alehouse. There's a stump for a table and a shared mug making slow rounds. No one's in a rush. The night itself seems to lean in, listening. The stars are clearer now, no lanterns or streetlights to hide them. Just the moon, big and watchful. A few dogs bark from time to time, but even they seem tired. "Remember when the Reeve tried to ride that ox?" Wolf says, grinning into his beard. Aelfric nods. The ox still hasn't recovered. Neither has the Reeve's pride. They chuckle softly, not loud. Laughter at night has to respect the sleepers. Then Edith speaks, voice slow and steady. "I once helped deliver a child in the middle of a thunderstorm. Roof was leaking, fire had gone out. Baby came out wailing like it had been struck by lightning." Everyone nods, no punchline needed. In the village, stories don't need dragons or battles to be worth telling. Sometimes, just getting through something is enough to earn a tale. These evenings are important. No one writes anything down. There are no books in Aelfric's cottage, not even a scrap of parchment. But memories live in these late-night talks. History gets passed along between sips of ale and bites of stale bread. Who married who? Who lost a cow? Who danced barefoot in the rain one midsummer's night? And then there are the deeper stories, the old ones. Wolf leans forward a little. "Did I ever tell you about the lantern ghost?" Edith groans. "Not the lantern ghost again." Aelfric smirks. "Go on then." Wolf grins. "Long ago, before even Edith was born." "Watch it." A traveller passed through the village. He carried a lantern that never went out, not even in the rain. They say he wasn't quite alive. He was looking for someone, calling a name no one recognized. Every night he walked the same road. And every night, someone who saw the lantern would go missing by morning. A long pause. "Then what happened?" Aelfric asks. "Then he vanished, just like that. But sometimes, when the mist rolls in thick, you can still see a flicker near the old willow." Silence again. It's a silly tale, everyone knows that. But still they all glance toward the tree line. Just in case. These stories are more than fun. They teach lessons. They keep children close to home. They pass on bits of truth hidden in the nonsense. And sometimes they remind people that the world is bigger, stranger, and more magical than it seems. Magic isn't gone in Aelfric's world. It lives quietly, behind trees, under stones, in half-forgotten charms. Aldgytha keeps an herb pouch tied above the door, just in case. The midwife mutters blessings over newborns. Farmers whisper to their fields before planting, not because it's science, but because it might help. Even prayers carry a little magic. You don't have to understand Latin to believe the words do something. The fire crackles gently. Wolf takes the last sip from the mug and sets it down with a satisfied grunt. "You know," Edith says softly, "my grandmother used to say silence is the most honest part of the day." They all sit with that for a moment, because there is something honest about this hour, when the work is done, when the bell's no longer ringing, when the Lord isn't watching, the steward isn't shouting, and the field isn't demanding, when you're just a person in the night, listening to wind in the grass and feeling the warmth of ale settle in your belly. It's quiet, but not empty. The night is full of small sounds, a cricket chirping, a gate creaking, a snore from the cottage next door, a goose muttering in its sleep. And the silence itself wraps around everything like a soft blanket. It doesn't smother, it holds. Eventually, Aelfric stands. "Same time tomorrow?" Wolf asks. "If the field lets me." They part ways, a nod here, a wave there. No need for big farewells. The village is small. You'll always see each other again, probably before breakfast. Back home, Aelfric steps inside. The fire has dimmed. The room smells of wood smoke, wool and sleep. Aldgytha is already resting, the children curled close. He eases down onto the straw mattress, careful not to wake anyone. For a moment, he just listens. Not to work, not to words. Just to the breath of his family, the hush of the world. The last quiet note of a long, long day. This is how the day ends. Not with trumpets, not with riches, but with ale, stories, and silence. And that, in this little corner of the world, is more than enough. Night deepens. The stars blink softly above the thatched rooftops like watchful old eyes, and the moon, half shy, half bold, hangs low in the sky. The village is wrapped in darkness now. And inside the cottages, every sound is muffled by sleep. Aelfric lies flat on his back on the straw mattress, staring up at the ceiling. The thatch overhead sways ever so slightly when the wind pushes against the roof. It creaks here and there. Nothing serious, just the cottage whispering to itself in the dark. The fire is down to its last glow. It's not enough to see by, just enough to feel. A flicker on the edge of vision. Warm, safe, fading slowly. Next to him, Aldgytha is already asleep. The baby stirs and lets out a soft whimper, then settles again. The older child mumbles something in a dream, probably arguing with a turnip or riding a goat into battle. Who knows? The mind is strange at night, and Aelfric, he's somewhere in between. He's not fully awake, not quite dreaming, just floating in that in-between place where the body rests, but the thoughts still roam. His limbs ache, his back throbs, his hands, still rough from gripping tools, twitch slightly, as if finishing work even in sleep. But the pain feels distant now, like it belongs to someone else. Like it's waiting for tomorrow. The roof above is more than shelter. It's the sky he sees before closing his eyes. The stars may be outside, but the thatch has its own stories. In winter, frost gathers at the edges. In spring, little spiders crawl across the beams. In summer, bees hum in the straw. And in autumn, the whole roof smells of dust, smoke, and the harvest. Aelfric knows every bump in the ceiling, every knot in the wood. He once named one of the beams after a particularly cranky ox, though he never told anyone. This cottage isn't much. It leans a little, the walls are uneven. The air smells like goats, garlic, and ash. But to Aelfric, it's home. Not just a place to sleep, but a place to rest. And that's different. Outside, the village sleeps, all of it. Even the alehouse is dark. Even the chickens have stopped muttering. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then thinks better of it. Dreams come slowly. Sometimes they're nonsense, fields full of talking vegetables or a chicken that won't stop giving orders. Other times they're memories, his father's laugh, his mother's voice, a time when he was young enough to believe the well was a bottomless tunnel to another world. But sometimes, just sometimes, the dreams are soft. Just shapes and warmth and sound. The hum of bees, the smell of fresh bread, the feeling of holding your child for the first time. A face long gone. A field that hasn't been harvested yet, glowing gold under a perfect sky. Dreams for a peasant are not full of castles or riches. They're not about silk cloaks or grand banquets. Those are stories, not dreams. A real dream is simple. Enough food for winter, a dry roof, children who grow strong, a morning without bad news. The cottage creaks again. The wind picks up and rattles the shutters. A bit of ash floats up from the hearth and drifts through the air like a tiny ghost. Aelfric watches it, eyelids heavy. In the dark, fears feel closer. Will the barley hold out? Will the Lord raise the rent again? Will the baby stay healthy through winter? But sleep has its own magic. It takes the sharp edge off worry. It folds the fears into a corner of the mind and whispers, later. And so he drifts. In another cottage, someone dreams of a feast. In another, someone dreams of falling off a cart. In the smallest house near the forest edge, a child dreams of flying. The whole village hums in its sleep, a soft chorus of breath and memory and hope. Even Agnes the goat, curled just outside the door, twitches in her dreams, perhaps chasing a particularly arrogant goose. Dream is the only escape the peasants truly have, and yet it's not escape in the way nobles might imagine. It's not running from the world, it's sinking deeper into it, finding comfort in the little things. A perfect furrow, a well-baked loaf, the sound of your wife humming while she stirs the pot. These are the dreams that hold the soul together. The moon shifts, the stars move quietly. Aelfric sleeps now, fully and deeply. His breathing is slow, one arm draped over his chest, his face softened by peace. No one sees this, no one records it. No historian writes, at this moment, Aelfric the peasant slept soundly after a day of honest labor. But it matters. It matters because this is what life truly is, not the big events, not the battles or the taxes or the royal decrees, but this, a man beneath a thatched roof sleeping beside his family, dreaming of enough. In a few hours, the rooster will start shouting. The fire will be stoked. The hoe will be lifted. Another day will begin. But not yet. Now is for dreams. Now is for silence. Now is for straw and soot and sleep. The first sound is a rooster. Of course it is. Shrill, confident, far too proud for something with feathers and questionable hygiene. It crows once, then again, just in case someone, somewhere, didn't hear. In Aelfric's cottage, the quiet begins to unravel. The baby stirs first, letting out a long yawn and a little whimper. Then the older child turns over in the straw, groaning at the light sneaking in through the gaps in the shutters. Agnes, faithful as ever, shuffles outside and lets out a short bleat. Her way of saying, "Get on with it." Aelfric opens one eye, then the other. His back aches, his hands are stiff, his mouth is dry. In short, everything is exactly as it should be. Another day has begun. There's no alarm clock, no calendar on the wall, no appointment reminders. But the rhythm of life doesn't need them. It runs deep, like a river beneath the earth. You feel it in your bones. You wake because it's time. You work because the day calls for it. You eat, rest, sleep, and rise, again and again. It's the eternal cycle. Aelfric sits up slowly, brushing bits of straw from his tunic. Beside him, Aldgytha is already moving, coaxing the fire back to life with soft breaths and practiced hands. Her hair is tied back. Her eyes are tired but focused. She's done this 1,000 times. She'll do it 1,000 more. Bread must be warmed, ale must be poured, tools must be checked, boots must be laced. Everything that was done yesterday must be done again today. Some would call it boring, repetitive. But for peasants like Aelfric, it's not boring, it's life. And life, however ordinary, is something to be held close. Because the cycle isn't just about routine, it's about survival. If you don't rise, the field doesn't get ploughed. If the field isn't ploughed, the barley doesn't grow. If the barley doesn't grow, there's no bread. And without bread, well, that's the end of the story. So Aelfric gets up. His joints complain, his stomach rumbles, but his feet find the floor, same as always. He pulls on his tunic, ties his belt, slips into his boots, still damp from yesterday's dew. Then he steps outside into the cold morning air. The village is waking up. Smoke drifts lazily from chimneys. A dog barks in the distance. Someone coughs. A child cries. A gate slams. And just like that, the wheel of the day begins to turn once more. The fields wait, wet with dew and quiet as a church. The tools rest by the wall, ready to be lifted. The oxen blink sleepily from their pen, chewing hay like philosophers. Nothing has changed, and yet everything matters. Because every day is a small chance, a new crack of light, a chance to plant, to mend, to help, to teach, to carry the same load a little further. Even in the sameness, there's growth. Children grow taller, fields grow greener, roofs wear out and then get patched, faces wrinkle, hens stop laying, new ones arrive, a young couple marries, an old neighbor dies. And through it all, the cycle spins on. Sometimes there are changes from beyond. A new lord might arrive, a war might stir, a disease might creep through like a fog no one invited. But even then, the peasants return to the land. They dig, they sow, they hope. Hope is quiet here. It doesn't come in speeches or flags. It comes in the way Aldgytha stirs the pot even when the barley runs low. It comes in the way Aelfric smooths the soil with his hand before planting. It comes in a loaf that rose better than expected, or a goat that finally stopped eating everyone's socks. No one writes their names in books, no one paints their portraits, but they are the thread that holds the world together. And in truth, though no one says it aloud, peasants like Aelfric are the heartbeat of the kingdom. Kings may rule, lords may own, but peasants feed, peasants build, peasants carry the weight no one else even sees. The eternal cycle is more than just days and seasons. It's memory, it's family, it's love, not the kind sung about in ballads, but the quiet kind. The kind that wakes before dawn and saves the best bit of bread for someone else. The kind that boils water and holds hands through sorrow. The kind that repeats, not because it has to, but because it wants to. Aelfric looks down the lane as the sun rises. The golden light touches the rooftops, the trees, the damp earth. It touches him too. He smiles, just a little. It will be another long day. There will be sweat, there will be work, there will be aching muscles and aching feet. But there will also be a moment of shade at midday, a bowl of warm stew in the evening, a whisper of a story before bed, a fire crackling in the hearth, a child's laughter, a soft kiss on the cheek. And if he's lucky, dreams that remind him it's all worth it. Because this is how the world turns, not on royal edicts or banners in the wind, but on the quiet strength of those who rise with the sun, carry their burdens, and do it all again tomorrow. The eternal cycle is not something to break, it's something to live.